Welcome back to English Noir Storytime. In this video, we are going to learn English through the story of Pablo Escobar. He was one of the most powerful criminals in all of history. He had more money than he could count. He had more power than most governments. The whole world wanted to stop him. Police wanted him. Soldiers wanted him. The American government wanted him. But for many years, no one could catch him. This is his story, and it is a story you will never forget. Imagine a man. He is standing in a room. The room is full of money. Not a little money, not a lot of money. We are talking about billions and billions of dollars. The money's on the floor, the money's on the table, the money's on the chairs, the money's in the corners of the room, the money's in bags and boxes and piles everywhere you look. The man looks at all this money. He is not happy. He is worried. He does not know what to do with all of it. He has too much money, too much to hide safely, too much to spend fast enough, too much even to count properly. He has a problem that most people cannot understand, and that problem is that he has too much of everything. This man is Pablo Escobar. And we are only at the very beginning of his story. Pablo Escobar was born on December 3rd, 1949. He was born in a small town in Colombia. The name of the town was Rio Negro. Colombia is a country in South America. It is a beautiful country with many different kinds of land. It has tall green mountains in the middle of the country. It has long rivers that flow through forests and valleys. It has warm, flat land near the coasts. It has cities and small towns and quiet villages. Colombia is a country with warm weather and friendly people and beautiful nature. But in 1949, many people in Colombia were living in great difficulty. There was not enough work. There was not enough money. Families worked very hard, but still had very little. Pablo's family was like this. His father worked as a farmer. Farmers work on the land. They grow food. They take care of animals. It is hard work, and it does not pay very much. His mother was a school teacher. Teachers are very important people. They help children learn and grow. But teachers in poor areas of Colombia did not earn much money at all. Together, Pablo's parents worked hard every day. But the money was never enough. Pablo was the third child in his family. He had older siblings, and he would later have younger ones too. They all lived together in a small house. The house was not big. The rooms were small. The walls were thin. There was not much furniture. There were not many nice things. But the family was together, and the mother and father loved their children. Pablo's mother had a name that meant a lot in the family. Her name was Hermilda. She was a woman of great strength. She woke up early every morning and worked until late at night. She cooked for her children. She cleaned their home. She went to her job as a teacher. She helped her children with their studies in the evenings. She was always moving, always working, always thinking about how to give her children a better life than she had. She believed with all her heart that education was the most powerful thing in the world. She told her children this every day. She wanted Pablo and his brothers and sisters to study hard, to learn, to become something important in life. She had big dreams for her family. When Pablo was still a young child, the family made a big decision. They decided to leave their small town and move to a bigger city. The city they moved to was called Medellín. Medellín was very different from their quiet hometown. It was large and noisy and full of energy. There were many thousands of people living there. There were busy roads with cars and trucks. There were markets and shops and factories. There were schools and churches and hospitals. There were tall buildings and crowded streets. There were rich parts of the city with beautiful homes and nice gardens. And there were poor parts of the city where houses were small and the streets were rough and families struggled every day. Pablo and his family moved into one of the poorer parts of Medellín. This was where they could afford to live. Their new home was simple. It was small. It was in a neighborhood where many other poor families also lived. Pablo went to school in this neighborhood. He played in the streets of this neighborhood. He grew up watching the life around him very carefully, and what Pablo saw around him made him feel something very strong inside. He saw the difference between the rich parts of the city and the poor parts. He saw men in expensive cars driving through the streets. He saw women in beautiful clothes shopping in nice stores. He saw children from rich families going to good schools with books and uniforms and everything they needed. And then he looked at his own life. He looked at his small house. He looked at his worn-out clothes. He looked at his family working so hard for so little. And he felt something burning in his chest. He wanted more. He wanted everything he saw in those rich parts of the city. And he made a promise to himself. One day, he would have it. Whatever it took, he would have it. Pablo was a sharp and intelligent boy. When he put his mind to his studies, he was good. He could think quickly and clearly. He could understand things fast. He was very good at communicating. When he talked, people listened to him. He had a natural ability to be the center of any group. Even when he was a child, other children would follow him. They would listen to his ideas. They would do what he suggested. There was something about Pablo that made people want to be near him, want to trust him, want to follow him. This was a very powerful quality. It was the quality of a natural leader. And Pablo would use this quality in ways that nobody could have predicted when he was just a small boy playing in the streets of Medellín. As Pablo grew into a teenager, he began to look for ways to make money outside of school and outside of normal work. He had friends who thought like him. They were young men who wanted money and were not afraid to break the rules to get it. Pablo and his friends began doing small illegal things. They would take things that did not belong to them. They would sell those things. Bit by bit, they started to learn how the underground world worked. One of the early businesses that Pablo and his friends were involved in was strange. They went to cemeteries at night. A cemetery is a quiet place where dead people are buried under the ground. Each person who is buried there usually has a gravestone placed on their burial site. A gravestone is a stone with the name of the dead person written on it, along with the year they were born and the year they died. Pablo and his friends would remove these gravestones from the cemetery. They would take them away and clean them. They would grind away the names that were already written on the stone. Then they would sell the cleaned stones to people who needed gravestones for new graves. It was a dark and sad business, but it made a small amount of money. And for Pablo at that time, any money was better than no money. The businesses got bigger as Pablo got older. He and his friends started to steal cars. They would find cars parked on the streets late at night. They would break into them quietly and carefully. Then they would drive the cars away. They had contacts who would buy these stolen cars, people who asked no questions and paid in cash. Car theft is a serious crime. The police were always watching for car thieves. Pablo could have gone to prison. But Pablo was careful and smart. He only did what he believed he could do without getting caught. And when things did go wrong, when the police did stop him or question him, Pablo had already learned a very important lesson about how things worked in Colombia. Money could solve problems. If you gave money to the right people, problems disappeared. If a police officer stopped you and you put enough cash in his hand, he would look the other way. Pablo learned this early, and he never forgot it. While Pablo was learning the streets of Medellín, something else was happening in the world. Something that would change Pablo's life completely and change the history of Colombia and the United States of America forever. That something was cocaine. Cocaine is a drug. It is a white powder. It is made from the leaves of a plant called the coca plant. The coca plant is a green bush that grows naturally in the mountains of South America. For thousands of years, the people who lived in these mountain regions had chewed the leaves of this plant. Chewing the leaf in small amounts gave them a small amount of energy. It helped them work in the high mountains where the air is thin. It was a normal part of life for many communities. It was no more unusual to them than drinking coffee is for people today. But in the 19th and 20th centuries, scientists in Europe and America found a way to take the coca leaf and process it into a concentrated and extremely powerful white powder. This powder is cocaine. When cocaine enters the human body, it travels very quickly to the brain. It changes the brain's chemistry. It makes the person feel a sudden and intense feeling of happiness and energy and power. Everything feels wonderful. Everything feels possible. But this feeling only lasts a short time. Then it stops completely. And when it stops, the person feels empty and sad and desperate. They want that good feeling back immediately. They want more cocaine. And this is how addiction begins. Addiction is when the body and the mind become dependent on something. The person cannot stop thinking about it. They cannot go through a day without it. They will do almost anything to get it. Cocaine addiction is one of the most destructive forces in human life. It breaks families. It ends careers. It takes away everything a person has. In the 1970s, cocaine became enormously popular in the United States. People in cities, people at parties, people in offices, people in all kinds of places were using cocaine. The demand for it was enormous. Demand means how much people want to buy something. And the demand for cocaine in America was growing every single day. But cocaine came from South America. It grew in Colombia and Peru and Bolivia. Getting it from the mountains of Colombia into the cities of America was a long and dangerous journey. The people who could make that journey happen reliably and in large quantities could make extraordinary amounts of money. Pablo Escobar saw this opportunity clearly and completely. He understood the business logic immediately. Here was a product that people desperately wanted. Here was a supply of that product in the country where he lived. And here was a huge market of buyers on the other side of the ocean who would pay enormous prices to get it. The only problem was moving the cocaine from the place where it was made to the place where people wanted to buy it, and Pablo believed he could solve that problem. He began small. He worked with other people who were already in the cocaine business. He helped them transport cocaine. He found ways to move it from one place to another without being caught. He hid cocaine inside ordinary objects that were being shipped between countries. He hid it inside tires. He hid it inside food products. He hid it inside the bodies of airplanes and the walls of boats. He used his creativity and his boldness to find ways that the police had not thought of yet. Every time he successfully moved cocaine and got paid, he reinvested that money into doing it again, but bigger. He hired more men. He bought better equipment. He made more connections with people who wanted to buy cocaine in the United States. He was building a business. The same way that a normal businessman would grow a company, Pablo was growing his operation. The difference was that his business was illegal and built on violence and fear. Pablo brought together other powerful men in Colombia who were also in the cocaine business. He formed partnerships and alliances. Together, this group of men created what became known as the Medellín Cartel. A cartel is an organization where multiple powerful producers work together instead of competing against each other. By working together, they could control the supply of cocaine more effectively. They could set the price. They could divide up different territories and customers. They could protect each other from the police and from rival criminal groups. The Medellín Cartel became the most powerful drug organization in the world. At the peak of its power, the Medellín Cartel was responsible for providing 80% of all the cocaine that entered the United States of America. 80%. Think about that carefully. If you imagine 10 packages of cocaine arriving in America, 8 of those packages came from Pablo Escobar and his partners. They did not just have a share of the market. They almost owned the entire market. This was the kind of control that no criminal organization had ever achieved before in history. The amount of money flowing into Pablo's hands was something that the human mind finds very difficult to comprehend. At his most powerful, Pablo Escobar was earning approximately 400 million American dollars every single week. That is not every month, that is not every year, that is every week. $400 million in 1 week. In a full year, that adds up to more than $20 billion. With that kind of money, Pablo became one of the wealthiest individuals on the planet. There were estimates that at his peak, he was the 7th richest person in the entire world. He had more personal wealth than many national governments. He had more money than he or anyone around him could ever spend, and this created a very unusual problem. Pablo had so much cash that he could not store it all safely. He could not put it in banks. Banks report large deposits to the government. The government would ask where the money came from. Pablo could not explain that, so he had to hide the cash physically. He buried it in the ground. He stored it in warehouses and empty houses. He put it inside walls. He put it in fields. He put it everywhere he could think of. His accountants, the people whose job was to count and manage the money, reported something extraordinary. Every year, Pablo spent millions of dollars just on rubber bands. Rubber bands are the small, stretchy loops you use to hold things together. His people needed so many rubber bands to bundle the stacks of paper money that it cost enormous amounts of money just to buy the rubber bands. And every year, Pablo also lost millions of dollars because rats got into the warehouses where the cash was stored. Rats chewed through the paper bills. They destroyed millions of dollars worth of cash. Pablo's people would report this to him, and Pablo would simply accept it. There was always more cash coming in. Losing money to rats was a normal part of Pablo Escobar's world. Pablo also worked hard to make his dirty money look clean. The process of making criminal money appear to be legal money is called money laundering. Laundering means washing or cleaning. When you launder money, you are cleaning it. You are removing its criminal origins and making it look like normal legal income. Pablo had very skilled people helping him with this. He created fake companies. These were businesses that had names and offices and bank accounts, but they did not actually sell any real product or provide any real service. Their only purpose was to receive cocaine money and process it so that when it came out the other end, it looked like normal business income. He moved money through banks in Panama. He moved money through banks in other countries with looser financial rules. He used a complex web of accounts and transfers to hide where the money really came from. As Pablo's wealth grew, his way of living changed completely. He built a massive estate outside of Medellín. He called this estate Hacienda Nápoles. In Spanish, hacienda means a large property or estate, and Hacienda Nápoles was truly enormous. It spread across many thousands of acres of land. It had multiple large swimming pools. It had a private artificial lake where Pablo could relax on boats. It had tennis courts and football fields. It had helicopter landing pads. It had a private airstrip where Pablo's own airplanes could take off and land. The main house was a large and grand building with many rooms, decorated with expensive furniture and beautiful objects from around the world. But Pablo was not satisfied with just a beautiful house. He wanted something that no other person in Colombia had. He wanted something that would make people talk and stare and remember. So he began bringing exotic animals from different parts of the world to his estate. He brought African elephants. He brought tall giraffes. He brought hippopotamuses, which are enormous river animals from Africa. He brought rare birds with colorful feathers. He brought lions. He brought a wide variety of wild and beautiful animals from every corner of the world. He built enclosures and spaces for them on his land. His estate became a private zoo. Children from the towns and villages nearby would come to the edge of his property and look through the fences at the amazing animals. Pablo liked this. He liked the image of a generous, powerful man who shared extraordinary things with the common people. And that image was something Pablo worked hard to build in Medellín. He spent enormous amounts of money helping poor communities. He paid for the construction of hundreds of small houses in the poorest neighborhoods of Medellín. These were houses for families who had been living in terrible conditions, in buildings that were falling apart, or in no home at all. Pablo gave them homes. He paid for the building of many football pitches in poor neighborhoods. He knew how much young people in Colombia loved football. He wanted them to have places to play. He gave away food. He gave away medicine. He gave away money directly to people he met on the street or in his neighborhood. When poor families in his area had problems that they could not solve with money, they would come to Pablo and ask for his help, and Pablo would help. He had a deep sense of loyalty to the poor community he had come from. He never forgot what it felt like to be poor and powerless. The poor people of Medellín adored him for this. They called him El Patrón, which means the boss or the patron. They called him Don Pablo, a title of respect. Many people compared him to Robin Hood, the legendary English character who stole from rich people and gave to poor people. In the minds of many people in the poorest parts of Medellín, that was exactly what Pablo Escobar was doing. He was taking from a corrupt and unfair system that had always kept poor people down, and he was giving back. For these people, Pablo was not a criminal. He was a hero. He was their protector. He was the most powerful man in Colombia, and he was on their side, but there was another side to Pablo Escobar. a side that those poor families who received his money did not always see or want to think about. Pablo Escobar was also one of the most violent men in the world. Pablo believed in a very simple principle when it came to power. If you helped him, he would protect and reward you. But if you stood in his way, if you refused to cooperate with him, if you challenged his authority or threatened his business, you would be dealt with. And being dealt with by Pablo Escobar meant being killed. Pablo had a phrase for how he handled important people who had power over him, people like judges and police commanders and politicians. He called his approach plata o plomo. In Spanish, plata means silver and plomo means lead. Silver is the color of money. Lead is the material that bullets are made from. So plata o plomo really means money or death. When Pablo sent representatives to meet a judge or a politician or a police official, the message was always the same. You can take my money, you can cooperate with me, and your life will be very comfortable. Or you can refuse and you will be shot. This was not a metaphor. This was a real choice that Pablo forced on thousands of people, and the threat was always completely genuine. Many people chose the money. Across Colombia, judges changed their legal decisions because Pablo paid them. Police officers who should have been arresting Pablo's men were instead protecting them because Pablo paid them. Politicians who should have been passing laws against drug trafficking were instead passing laws that helped Pablo because Pablo paid them. Entire departments of the Colombian government were corrupted by Pablo's money. He was not just running a drug operation. He was running a parallel government, a shadow state that ran inside and alongside the real one. But there were brave people who refused. There were judges who received Pablo's offer and said no. There were police officers who would not take the bribe. There were politicians who stood up publicly against Pablo Escobar, regardless of the danger to themselves. These were people of extraordinary courage, because they knew exactly what refusing meant. And the one who came to represent this courage most powerfully was a man named Luis Carlos Galan. Luis Carlos Galan was a politician. He was tall, well-spoken, intelligent, and deeply honest. He cared about Colombia. He had spent his career fighting against corruption and against the influence of drug money on Colombian politics. He spoke out loudly and clearly against Pablo Escobar. He called for strong action against the cartels. And most dangerously for Pablo, Galan supported the extradition of Colombian criminals to the United States. Extradition means sending a criminal from their home country to another country where they will face trial and punishment. Pablo Escobar was more afraid of being sent to the United States than he was afraid of anything else. In Colombia, he had power. He had connections. He had bought people. But in an American court and an American prison, his money meant nothing. American judges could not be bought. American prisons were not like Colombian prisons. Pablo was absolutely terrified of extradition. And Galen was the man who most wanted it to happen. In August of 1989, Luis Carlos Galen was speaking at a public event. It was an outdoor meeting. Thousands of people had gathered to hear him speak. He was a popular man. Many people in Colombia believed that Galan would one day be the president of Colombia. He was standing on a stage speaking to the crowd, and then shots rang out. Pablo's men had been in the crowd. Galan was hit. He fell. He died that night. Colombia erupted in grief and fury. Galan was a symbol of everything good and honest in Colombian public life. His murder was a message to all of Colombia from Pablo Escobar. This is what happens to people who stand against me. Nobody is safe, not even the future president. The Colombian government responded with total war against Pablo Escobar and the Medellín Cartel. They put enormous resources into hunting him. They worked more closely than ever with the American government and the DEA, which is the American organization that fights drug crime. Special forces were assembled. New units were created. A dedicated team called the Search Block was formed. Every single person in the search block had one job, and one job only: find Pablo Escobar. Pablo was not going to surrender quietly. He declared his own war on the Colombian state. He ordered bombings across the country. In Bogotá, the capital city, bombs exploded in crowded streets. In Medellín, bombs went off in markets and public spaces. Bombs were placed on city buses. Bombs were left in shopping areas. Hundreds of ordinary Colombian people, people who had nothing to do with drugs or politics, were killed or injured by these bombs. Colombia lived in a state of constant fear. Then Pablo did something that shocked the entire world. In November of 1989, a passenger airplane belonging to a Colombian airline called Avianca took off from Bogota, heading to the city of Cali. There were 107 people on the plane. Ordinary people. Business people. Families going to visit relatives. A young student, an old man going home. Pablo believed that one specific person on that plane was a government informant, someone who was giving information about Pablo to the police. Pablo wanted that one person dead. His men had placed a bomb on the aircraft before it took off. The bomb exploded when the plane was flying over the mountains. The plane broke apart in the air. All 107 people on board died. 107 innocent lives ended because Pablo wanted to kill one person. It was one of the darkest moments in the history of Colombia. And it showed the entire world exactly how dangerous Pablo Escobar truly was. The pressure on Pablo intensified to levels he had never experienced before. The search block was working around the clock. American intelligence agencies were providing Colombia with tracking technology and information. Pablo's enemies inside Colombia were growing. A group called Los Pepes formed. Los Pepes stands for People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar. These were individuals and groups who hated Pablo. Former business partners he had betrayed, families of people he had murdered. Rival criminal organizations. Los Pepes began attacking Pablo's organization from within Colombia. They went after his properties. They went after the people who worked with him and helped him. Pablo was now fighting on multiple fronts at the same time. Pablo had to go underground. He could no longer live openly in his estate. He could no longer stay in any one location for more than a short time. He moved from safe house to safe house, often changing location every few days. A safe house is a secret location used by someone who is hiding from authorities. It looks ordinary from outside. Inside, a wanted fugitive hides. Pablo moved through a network of safe houses across Medellín. He changed his phone frequently. He used walkie-talkies with codes. He kept all communications as short as possible to avoid having his signal tracked. In 1991, Pablo made an unexpected move. He negotiated with the Colombian government and agreed to surrender. But his conditions were strict. He demanded that the Colombian constitution be changed to prevent extradition to the United States. He demanded that the prison where he would serve his sentence be built to his specifications. The government agreed to these terms. They were so desperate to stop the violence that they accepted. A prison called La Catedral was built near Envigado. And it was unlike any prison in the world. It had a football field inside. It had a bar. It had comfortable rooms. Pablo's friends could visit. His family could come. He continued to conduct his business from inside. He gave orders. He had meetings. He had people killed. He was in prison in name only. When the Colombian government finally understood what was happening inside La Catedral, they tried to move Pablo to a real prison. But in July of 1992, when the government soldiers arrived at La Catedral to transfer Pablo, he was not there. He had received information that they were coming. He had walked out, escaped. Just like that, Pablo Escobar was free again and on the run again. The final hunt for Pablo lasted about a year and a half. His network was shrinking. His men were being captured. Los Pepes were attacking his organization relentlessly. The search block was closing in. Pablo was more isolated than he had ever been in his life. He was moving constantly, sleeping in difficult conditions, eating simple food, living like a fugitive. But he could not stay away from his family. He loved his wife and his children deeply. He could not be with them physically. It was too dangerous. The government was watching his family closely, hoping Pablo would try to make contact. So Pablo did what many people do when they cannot be with the people they love. He called them on the phone. He tried to be careful. He changed phones, he kept calls short, but the technology available to the search block was advancing all the time, and they were getting better and better at tracking phone signals. On December 1st, 1993, Pablo called his son. It was his son's birthday. They spoke for several minutes. Pablo told his son he loved him. He asked how he was doing. It was a real human moment, a father and a child talking on a birthday. Pablo did not know that every second of that call, powerful tracking equipment was finding his exact location. The search block found him. He was in a 2-story house in a middle-class residential neighborhood of Medellín called Los Olivos. A completely ordinary neighborhood, the kind of place nobody would suspect. The following morning, December 2nd, 1993, the search block surrounded the house before dawn. They moved in when they were ready. Inside the house, Pablo heard the noise of the operation beginning. He picked up his gun. He ran through the house. He went upstairs. He came out onto the roof. He ran across the tiles of the rooftop, looking desperately for some way to escape. He was in his socks. He was holding his rifle. He was moving fast, but there was nowhere to go. The house was completely surrounded by men who had been waiting their whole careers for this moment. Shots were fired. Pablo Escobar was struck by a bullet. He went down on the rooftop. He did not rise again. Pablo Escobar was dead. He was 44 years old. The most hunted man in the world had finally been found. The news spread across Colombia and then across the world within hours. In the cities of Colombia, people went into the streets in celebration. They danced. They hugged strangers. They sang. People who had lived for years in fear of bombs and murder and terror felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Relief, safety, hope. For them, the nightmare was over. Colombia could begin to heal. But in the poor neighborhoods of Medellín, many people wept. The man who had given them homes and food and football fields was gone. For these people, the complicated reality of who Pablo was had always been easier to ignore. They had experienced his generosity directly. The bombs had been in other parts of the city. The political murders had been in a different world from theirs. They mourned the loss of the man who had been kind to them. And their mourning was genuine and real, even if the full picture of Pablo's life was a very different and much darker story. Pablo Escobar's death did not end the cocaine trade. The Medellín Cartel fell apart after he died. But other organizations filled the space. Other criminal groups took over the business. The flow of cocaine from Colombia to the United States continued. The problem did not disappear. It only changed shape. Pablo had not invented the cocaine trade, but he had industrialized it. He had turned it into a global operation of enormous scale, and the machine he built continued to run even without him at its center. Pablo's son grew up under the impossible weight of being the child of the world's most famous criminal. He changed his name after his father's death. He built a career as an architect and designer. He travels the world meeting families of people his father had killed. He sits with them. He listens to their stories. He says he is sorry. He cannot change what his father did. He cannot undo the pain, but he can bear witness to it. He can acknowledge it. He can carry it with him. He says publicly that he loved his father, but that he knows his father was wrong. He says that the children of bad people do not have to become bad people themselves. His life is a choice made in the opposite direction from his father's. Colombia itself has made choices in the opposite direction from its darkest years. Medellín today is remarkable. It is a city that was once the most violent city on earth. Today it has parks with beautiful public sculptures. It has a modern cable car system that climbs up the steep mountainsides and connects the poor neighborhoods at the top to the city below. It has a metro system. It has universities and technology companies. Young people from Medellín are designing buildings and writing software and making films and contributing to the world in powerful ways. The city has not forgotten its history, but it has refused to be defined by it. It has chosen to become something different. Pablo Escobar was born into poverty and grew up watching the world divide itself into those who had everything and those who had nothing. He decided very early that he would be on the side of those who had everything, no matter what it cost to get there. He got there. He had more than almost anyone in the world. He had money beyond imagination. He had power that governments could not easily challenge. He had a private zoo and airplanes and a palace. And then he had a rooftop and a gun and nowhere left to run. All of it came down to a phone call on his son's birthday. All of it ended in a pair of socks on a rooftop in Medellín. Power built on fear is not real power. It is only the illusion of power. And illusions do not last. The real Pablo Escobar, underneath all the money and the guns and the myth, was still that poor boy from a small house in Medellín, looking out at a world that seemed to belong to other people. He spent his whole life trying to prove that he was more than that boy, and in doing so, he destroyed thousands of lives, including, in the end, his own. Thank you so much for watching this video on English Storytime. Every single sentence in this video was written for Level A1 English learners. Short sentences, simple words, clear and honest language, and a true story that will stay with you. This is how we learn English here. Not from textbooks, not from grammar exercises, but from real stories about real people and real events in the real world. Your brain has been working today. Your ear has been listening. New words and patterns have been entering your memory. Even if you did not understand every single word, you understood the story. And that understanding is the beginning of language. Keep coming back. Keep listening. Your English is growing every single time. Our next video will be another incredible, true story. It will be about money, deception, and one of the greatest financial crimes ever committed. It is a story you will not believe is real, but it is real. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and press the notification bell so you are the first to know when it arrives. And now, before you go, I have one question for you. Write your answer in the comments below. Write in English, at any level, short answer or long answer. Just write. Here's the question. Pablo Escobar was very generous to poor people, but he was also very violent to many others. Do you think it is possible to judge a person fairly when they have done both terrible things and good things in their life? Think about it. Then write what you think. I look forward to reading your answers. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video. Goodbye.